Dear friends, today I am going to talk on the topic human evolution and migration stories told by DNA. My talk involve four important components, and in the first part I'll discuss about human origin and the ancient DNA. And in the second part, I'll explain who are Indians. We call all of us Indians, and who are all Indians now, based on the stories told by DNA. And then, what is the current status and future of human beings? There are conflicting and interesting views about the future of human civilization. And then, what is actually the things which we can do as a human society to serve nature and serve the mankind? These are the things which I'll involve in my talk. So essentially, before I talk about the origin of human beings, we need to discuss about the origin of the entire universe. So all the things began from a single atom began with a Big Bang, almost 13.8 billion years ago. And that is how, with a Big Bang, the universe originated. And if you look at the position of our Earth in this planet, this is almost like this. So in this planet, we are the Earth. This is the position of the Earth, and then we look at the Earth, the origin of the Earth. It began almost 4.54 billion years ago, and the first molecule of life began on ocean, the hot dilute ocean, at that period of time, almost 3.7 billion years ago. And the first human beings walked on the surface of the Earth probably 500,000 years ago. That means, as a species, our origin, or our immediate ancestors' origin in this planet started only 500,000 years ago, when we think about the planet and our universe. Okay. And let us see, I'm not specifically going into the whole history of human evolution, but let me start with the discussion about the first hominids, or the human-like, the ancestors. And our immediate evolutionary family, it is comprised, especially the family, the group of hominoids. It's actually a group of primates that include the lesser apes. And the lesser apes are primarily represented by siamangs and gibbons, and they are called the great apes. And then the great apes include the chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and the orangutans. And if you go by the fossil record, along with the studies of human and the ape DNA, it indicates that humans shared a common ancestry with the chimpanzees and bonobos. And that means the great apes, especially 6 million years ago. If you look at the phylogenetic tree, you will understand that this is a point in which the humans and the other apes got separated. And then you can see a separate origin. And you can see our immediate ancestors are the bonobos and the chimpanzees. And our close relatives are orangutans and gorilla. And this is a point almost 6 million years ago. We got separated from our common ancestor of the chimpanzee and bonobo. That means we have an independent origin from a common root from where the chimpanzees and bonobos originated. And how do we come to this kind of a conclusion based on the DNA story? And this is what I'm going to tell you. Okay. Then how will you understand about the human origin and how the humans originated in different parts of the world? And there is no other way but to explore the fossils. And the majority of the human fossils are available from Africa, from where we believe that the first human beings originated. Okay. And if many of you learn in your school classes or in the PG or degree zoology classes that the earliest human fossils were from Africa. And then you can see that our earlier belief was that the first Homo Sapiens, the fossils which we excavated, was from the Great Rift Valley of East Africa, and where we got some fossils, human fossils. But the recent studies, we got a recent fossil in a few years back, that is from Morocco. And then that region is very, very important, because that human fossil was almost 300,000 years back. That means we earlier thought that human beings originated 1.5 lakh years ago, but the recent discovery of a fossil the Jebel from Morocco 300,000 years ago, clearly shows that our origin, the origin of the Homo sapiens, is way back, almost 300,000 years ago. Okay, so that is the recent discovery, and you can see some of the the excavations from Africa, and all the things, all these excavations clearly reveal from different parts of Africa, clearly reveal that the human, the Homo, the genus Homo, it has its origin from 300 to 400,000 years ago. So this is the results based on the excavation of fossils from different parts of Africa. And then you can see that if you go by the geological history, the major issue defining the human evolution is that the availability of fossils. It is not uniform across the world, and most of the fossils are now available from Africa. And thanks to the recent interest in human origin and the ancient DNA molecule, and there are more and more excavations happening in different parts of the world, and as a result, we are coming up, the scientists are coming up with the more and more fossil records from different parts of the world. And more fossil records means the science is becoming more and more clear. The human origin, human migration, the things are becoming more and more clear. Okay, then what we are going to do with the human, the fossils? Once you locate the fossil, and then there are a lot of people interested in this kind of a study. Anthropologists, okay, the anthropologists, zoologists, they're all interested in studying the origin of the human species, the history of human origin, and of course different anthropological connectivity associated with that. So once we get the fossils from or excavated from some of the areas in some part of the world, what we are going to do with that? Okay, so the scientists have now they can recreate the entire body out of the sculpture based on the computer imaging programs. And also there are so this is the whole process of excavation. So this is actually a Herculean task. We need not actually lose anything from the remains, and we have to excavate each and every bone from the area, and then we have to reassemble it, and then we have to actually recreate the human beings based on the skull or what are the structure available on that. Thanks to the development of technology, a lot of technologies are available which enable us to recreate the human beings or the shape of the human beings from the excavations. Okay, so this is how we recreate. All these processes are involved in the archaeological science, with which we can, from the fossil we excavated, from the skeleton we excavated, we actually transform the whole thing into a human shape. With with all this kind of modern technology, imaging technology, all the 3D dimensional structure formations, and of course with the help of this plaster of Paris and all, we actually recreate the skull, and with the skull we actually recreate the human structures like this. So that is how from the skeletal excavations we gradually come up with the the shape, recreate the shape with the help of computer modeling. Okay, all these processes are involved when you excavate a skull, and normally it involves a lot of the beautification processes, and with the application of science, we just transform based on the skull structure and shape of the each and every skull bones. Then we recreate the structure like that. That is how we recreate the whole thing. But I'm going to talk about the interesting result of the DNA studies. Based on a series of studies done across the world, especially in the recent past. And I urge many of the participants here, particularly the biology students, and this is not connected with biology alone, I will explain it later, and to read and understand this book, Who We Are and How We Got Here. And this is a book by David Reich. David Reich is actually a professor with the Department of Genetics, Harvard Medical School. And he's a man who actually inspired a lot of studies. And he's a man behind developing a lot of technologies to extract the DNA from the fossils. Okay. And then, his studies revealed that the human populations speaking 7,000 plus languages and living in different parts of the world, they are connected by some way or other. And what is the connecting link? It is not the caste, it is not the religion, it is a DNA molecule. And the DNA molecule tells you the story how the human populations in different parts of the world, maybe in Antarctica or in Africa where the life began, the human origin began, and in different parts of the world, they remain connected. Okay. And the modern, though the scientists actually started comparing the human populations in different parts of the world by comparing the blood groups, and that was the initial study. But after the development of DNA gene sequencing technology, genome sequencing technology, and now we have a powerful tool, and the powerful tool is DNA. And we have different modes of, if you are any living animal, we can extract the DNA from the tissues, both from the nucleus as well as from the mitochondria, and we can sequence it. This is not a big issue in the modern technology, in modern era of genome sequencing. But here the issue is, whenever we get a fossil, you have to extract the DNA. The fossil may be 100,000 years old. And how do you get the DNA molecule? And this is actually a tricky business, and it involves a lot of technologies. Okay, and we have now, and this molecule of DNA extracted from the skeletal remains or the fossils are known as ancient DNA. This is also known as aDNA. And aDNA is something very peculiar because you are extracting the DNA molecule from a specimen which is more than 10,000 years old. Sometimes it may be 200,000 years old. So how do we do that? And then how do you understand this kind of a technique? And explain you in brief what is actually done during this process. And in this process, what we need is actually a bone. And from the bone, what the problem with this kind of an excavation is that you are getting a bone from a fossil, a human being, a human fossil. But the problem is that you have to extract DNA. And this, remember, this fossil is there in the soil for the last hundreds of years, thousands of years. Then there may be all possibilities of contamination with the bacteria, fungi, and other organisms. That means when you extract, you will extract the DNA of all the contaminating sources, including microbes, etc. So that means you need a clean room, and then you need a bone which carry the DNA. And in all probabilities, the bones which carry the DNA molecule may be the internal ones, where the DNA may be preserved in some way or other. And the scientists now, look at the internal ear, where we have the ear bones, like the cochlear bones, and this is one of the sources where you will have better preservation inside the body, inside the skull. And majority of the scientists now look at this the cochlear bones or the ear ossicles, and from there they extract they make it into a powder, because it's not easy to extract directly the DNA there. So they make the powder, and from there the solution is made, and from this solution they extract the DNA and ultimately go for sequencing. Then how in the recent past we got this much of information about the human DNA, particularly from the fossils, and that is primarily because of the technology available for extraction of DNA molecule. And you can see that in the last 10-20 years, what is happening? The amount of the ancient DNA available is increasing dramatically, and now we have more than 5,000 the whole genome, the sequences available from the fossils excavated from different parts of the world. And that tells you a lot of interesting stories about the human origin as well as migration, and let us discuss that. Okay, so that is, this is the region which is now normally selected by the archaeology, the scientists or geneticists. They extract the bone from the internal ear, and then they extract it. Okay, so the ancient DNA is actually the number of the number of sequences made from the ancient DNA is increasing. Now, this cannot be done by biologists alone, but this involves a lot of, especially when you discuss about the human origin, their migration, etc. You need to combine the science with different other subjects as well. And that is why this is a multidisciplinary subject. When you think about the human origin and migration, you have to think about the origin of languages. You have to think about how the languages spread in different parts of the world, and how the human settlement was there. So you need the support of the historians, the anthropologists, archaeologists, biologists, and linguists. So all the services are taken together when you elucidate the story of the human migration and their settlement in different parts of the world. Okay, and the ancient DNA, and what is actually something very unique about ancient DNA. So this is there are possibilities that you will get good quality DNA from these fossils, especially when it is remain frozen in some part of the world, and then the chances of getting the molecule is more. But the problem with tropical countries like India is that there is a lot of heat here. So that itself is enough for killing a major part of or removing major part of the DNA from the fossils. Okay, and the whole studies of extracting the DNA molecule from the ancient DNA molecule from the fossils started only in the very recent past. In 1995, the scientists got better results, and thanks to the development of technology, the development of primer, particularly in 2007, the postmortem DNA modification and damage became very, very easy. And in 2009, the ancient DNA studies has been revolutionized with the introduction of much cheaper research techniques, particularly the sequencing technologies. Okay, and the scientists can now extract ancient human DNA from almost 2.4 lakh year old dirt. Okay, the dirt available from the human fossil itself is enough. Any piece of DNA from the bone, teeth, hair, or any internal body part is enough for extraction of DNA, thanks to the technologies. Then I'm not explaining the technology, but what the scientists now do is they follow some medical genomics. So the problem is that the human genome, as you can see, it's represented by 3 million base pairs, and we don't require all the things, all the genes in human genome. So what the archaeologists or the scientists working with ancient DNA, they does is they select the required DNA from the human genome. Okay, so they follow the technique in medical genomics. They isolate that part of the DNA that is most interesting for analysis, because they don't select all the genes. They select only the genes which are of historic importance. Okay, and then they do this kind of the sequencing. What they do is they wash the DNA in a series of artificially printed out bait sequences. That means they make there is a device called DNA printer, which will allow you to print the small sequences of DNA. So they artificially print out the bait sequences, maybe 50-liter long ATCG sequences, and then the liquid DNA sample is washed over these baits, and these are nothing but the primers. And whatever required based on the primer, whatever our required genes will stuck to that, and they sequence only that kind of a gene. So this is the method they follow. They use baits, DNA baits, and select or isolate the required number of genes from the cocktail. So they make a primary cocktail of million genes, and then wash the DNA sample over it. And the millions of genes, the cocktail carry millions of genes, and then we can selectively isolate the genes which is required for the study of human history and the evolution. So this is how, from a larger sample, we isolate selectively the DNA molecule with the help of this kind of a bait DNA. So with this, the amount of DNA available in the fossil is very, very less. So we from that actually we selectively isolate the DNA molecule required for the study of human evolution and things like that. So when you go to the process of the extraction of DNA molecule, that this is a human cell, and everyone of us understand that there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, and one come from one is paternal and the other is maternal, and this is the double-stranded DNA molecule, and the DNA molecule of human beings carry 3 billion pairs of nucleotide, but the letters are only ATCG. That means our genes carry only these four nitrogenous bases: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. So that means this is actually the structure. So what we are going to do with this set, then what is actually, even though we get one chromosome from our father, one from our mother, but even if you inherit this kind of chromosomes, one from mother and one from father, you look different from your mother and father. And why this happens? This happens primarily because of mutation, and this kind of random mutation. So that means even if you inherit this from the paternal and maternal chromosomes, there may be some slight variations, and there may be some mutations. So the scientists actually look at these mutations, and you can see then in some area there will be small variations or few differences, but in some area there are a lot of variations. And this indicates that, so short time, if there is few differences, it shows that the sharing of a common ancestor, it may be 500 years ago. That means it's very, very recent. At the same time, when there are lot of differences between these two chromosomes, it indicates that there is a long-term ancestral gene available here, with maybe 100,000 years ago. Okay, so this is how we understand how this, looking at the variations or the mutations in the two genes, how we are connected with the ancestors, which simply means we get some of the ancestral gene from the from our past. That means even if we are living today, all of your genes carry the ancestral genes, which may be millions of years back. Okay, this is the technique which we use for finding out these differences. And in humans, about 36 recombination events occur per generations. That means when you have your the genes inherited from your father and mother, in a single generation there are possibility of 36 recombination events in one chromosome. But you remember that you have 36 you have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and that means this kind of an even recombination even happens in every chromosome. Okay, so the scientists basically look at this kind of a frequency of recombination events, and then frequency of ancestral genes available in your genetic material, and then compare. And if you take a global population and you take different samples from different parts of the world, then the comparison is much more easier. And bioinformatics tools available now makes the comparison very, very easy. And there are two ways of looking at it. One, you look at the nuclear genome, and that is one possibility. And but that's very expensive. But the more recent one and more less expensive one and more precise one is look at the mitochondrial genome. And I told you the genome is available in the nucleus, and the genome is available in the mitochondria. Mitochondria, the advantage is that you have a large number of genes, and it is single-stranded DNA molecule, so it's easy to look at. And also the number of this is the maternally inherited, and as a result it's very easy to study the mutations happening in the mitochondrial DNA. And that is the reason why in many of these kind of studies, mitochondrial DNA is actually taken into consideration while we look at the human evolution. Okay. And then another thing, there is a general belief, including among the zoologists, that all our ancestors are from Africa. Okay, and we now know that through the genetic analysis, I will come to that later, that all the modern human beings actually evolved from Africa almost 300,000 years ago, and that is now very clear. And then they migrated out of Africa, and this is called out of Africa hypothesis, and then they reached different parts of the world. This is the modern theory based on DNA explains to you. But that doesn't mean that all the people in all the part of the world, they're all Homo sapiens. No. And we have the parallel to the Homo sapiens, there are Neanderthals also, which the Neanderthals inhabited in the Eurasia, and they also lived parallel to the Homo sapiens. That means there is also a mixing or hybridization between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. So that means the genes which we inherit now basically come from Homo sapiens from Africa, and there are some intermixing happened during the migration. There was actually crossbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, and that means the modern human beings also carry the Neanderthal genes. Okay, this is something which we have to understand. And then you can see how this kind of a recombination happens many generations after interbreeding. As you can see, some part of the genes are carried. Okay, and then this is actually the modern theory says we have the modern human beings and the modern human beings and Neanderthals, and the inbreeding occurred between the Neanderthals and human beings. And as a result, some of the modern human beings also carry the Neanderthal genes. So this is something which you have to understand now. And you can see this is how this is revealed through the study of the fossils, especially the Neanderthal fossils. And then clearly all these blue lines indicate actually the genes which we got, the modern human beings got from the Neanderthals. Okay. So at the same time, you remember that the human beings, the Homo sapiens, were much powerful than the Neanderthals, and as a result of competition, we totally eliminated Neanderthals from the planet. Okay, that is how now we have only Homo sapiens as here. And when the human beings, they started migrating from the Africa to different parts of the world, there were Neanderthals also, and then there was at this period of time the crossbreeding occurred, and the human beings, after crossbreeding, they migrated to different parts of the world. And that is the reason why the Africans, they have the pure Homo sapiens, but the people who actually travel to different parts of the world, they carry the genes of Neanderthals as well. That means the Eurasians, the people in the Europe as well as Asia, they carry 2% of the genes from the Neanderthals. Okay. And the modern theory of David Reich, revealed by the the ancient DNA study, consider three divisions of Homo sapiens as of now. And one is the modern human beings, which is present in throughout the world now, in Africa, Europe, Asia, and Oceania, and Neanderthals, which is no more there in the world, but there is actually the gene flow which happened from the Neanderthals to the Homo sapiens. And recently, there is actually an interesting discovery, Denisovans, and we don't know much about this group of the fossil recently excavated from some part of Siberia, which tells you an entirely different story. They may be a different kind of human beings existed in that part of the world. But as of now, we know only very little about that. But the studies are coming up to show the different, their genetic composition. Okay. And then there may be a potential unknown human hominid also in our planet. But unfortunately, because of the lack of the fossil evidences or ancient DNA, we don't know anything about this group. Okay, and then because of the mitochondrial the genome study, which clearly shows that this is the way in which human beings migrated to different parts of the world. That means the original Homo sapiens and other related hominids, they appeared in some part of Africa, and then they migrated out of Africa. And what actually driven the migration, we don't know. Okay, the Homo sapiens started the journey almost 200,000 years back, and they migrated to different parts of the world. It never happened all of a sudden. It happened in three, possibly four intervals, and where different hominids migrated to different parts of the world. But all other species except the Homo sapiens disappeared because of competition, because of the fight with the different wild animals present in that point of time, and or maybe because of diseases and other the climatic events. Only human beings, Homo sapiens, who are actually much brilliant and smarter than the remaining species, they survived, and they migrated to different parts of the world. Okay, and then what actually driven the migration? There are different theories. What actually was a driving force which actually enabled the migration of human beings out of Africa? This is called out of Africa hypothesis, and some of the theories relate that kind of a migration with the climate change also. When the climate change became very severe in many parts of Africa, the people were forced to migrate out of Africa. This is one theory. There are contradicting views also about that. Okay. And then Homo sapiens, as the name indicates, sapiens, the name given by Linnaeus, says they're wise. We are much wiser than the remaining hominids. And why we are more wiser? Because we have a better brain. Okay. And since we have the Homo sapiens have a better brain, we have designed the tools, and then we have our own analytical power and reasoning power, and we actually conquered the world, and that is the only reason. And then there are some other reasons also which helped in the brain development of human beings. And the day from which the human beings started eating meat, and we all believe that the human beings are all born vegetarians, absolutely nonsense. But all the study shows that the day in which the human beings started eating the cooked meat, which was rich in vitamin B3, containing nicotinamide, and then that is actually the triggering point of the human brain development and development of subsequent protein molecule, which enabled the humans to develop Homo sapiens to develop a much better brain, and that enabled us to actually wipe out the remaining hominids and also conquer the world. Okay, and then some of you, especially the students, ask a question. What happened with the why the human beings, the modern human beings, have lesser hair in the body? Okay, and it all started with bipedalism, the day in which the human beings started walking in the two legs, especially 5 to 7 million years ago. Bipedal hominid body hair may have disappeared gradually, and it allowed better dissipation of heat through sweating. And the development of sweat glands also has to do something to do with the disappearance of hairs, and that is another thing. And also, the people, the development of the white people in the world. We all basically originated as black people in the planet, and the disappearance of the melanin pigment or skin pigmentation. It is almost 1.2 million years ago under conditions of mega drought, and actually it drove early humans into arid and open landscapes. And then that is the reason why in 1.2 million years ago, under conditions of mega drought, when the people were exposed to the open landscapes, we developed actually a lot of pigmentation in the body, and the people became more and more blacker in order to protect ourselves from the ultraviolet radiations of the sun. And the melanin pigment mechanism, the genetic mechanism and the biochemical pathway, it became more activated, and we produced more and more melanin pigment. And then when the people started to migrate in different parts of the world, the skin color, the decreased, especially in the northern latitude, and in the white, the so-called white people, the whole mechanism of production of melanin became switched off. And these people with the white, because of mutation, and these people with the white skin, and that is selectively, then that naturally that gene got selected during the process of evolution, and the white people originated in the planet. And there are large number of scientific papers which selectively, tell the story about the human skin color development in different parts of the world. Anyway, these are all other interesting aspects when we think about the human migration. Okay, so this mitochondrial DNA tells you the story when you analyze the human population in different parts of the world. All these things started with the Human Genome Project. Those who are interested may look at the way in which the Human Genome Project operated. Thanks to the development of gene sequencing technology, they started collecting blood samples from different ancient, the people in different parts of the world. They isolated the DNA, especially the mitochondrial DNA, started comparing the mutations happen and the genetic similarities. And based on the genetic similarities, we can actually recreate the story of human migration about, based on the biological clock. And the clock tells you very interesting stories. And when the humans, the journey started from Africa almost 100,000 years back, and then how do they migrate? And all the red lines indicate the earlier migrations, and you can see that almost 5 billion years ago, the people also started coming through India, through the Central Asia. And when you look at the Indian population, it's very interesting. We have almost more than 4,600 well-defined populations in India, almost 532 tribes, and out of that 72 are primitive tribes and 36 are hunter-gatherers. Okay, and we speak different languages and the different social structure. And how do we come? And you can see that ancient the human beings are from the Africa. They came to India almost 600,000 years back, and they came and settled in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And these people are still there. Okay, all these are Indians, and you can see these are the 5 groups available in this part of the world. Okay, so if you look at the current Andaman and Nicobar populations, human populations, you can see that, and they were all negritos. That means they carry the African genes with them. And then there are different groups like Greater Andamanese, then Little Andamanese, and there are 2 other groups, Nicobaris and Shompans, and they have the Mongoloid origin. That means they have a different route of their entry into Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Okay. And then if you look at the mitochondrial DNA analysis, and then you can see that they have a different kind of origins, and they come from different parts. So 2 groups are there. One is the Nicobaris, they have the Mongolian origin, and then another group, they have the African origin. Okay. And then this is the way in which they traveled. Almost the journey started 100,000 years back, and finally they reached India. It's believed that they reached the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Based on the gene studies done in the populations there, it is almost 6,000 years ago the people came and settled in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now the question is, that means earlier, the Indians, they came through this route. And now the question is, how many people or the tribal groups in India share the same genetic, some close genetic similarity with Andaman and Nicobar Islands? The studies done by the central CCMB scientists in India, they show that many of them, these are the connectivities. And the connectivity shows that there is one group called Rajavanshi in North India. They are connected with that. And one group in Kerala called Kurumba, they also share some the characters with the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. This is the current estimate. I'm not going into the current caste system, and many details are available. Some are very controversial, and I'm not explaining that. So remember that this is one group of tribals which have connectivity with in Kerala, and in the east coast of India, with some connectivity with the Andaman and Nicobar tribals. Okay, then what are the then who are all the Indians now, whom we call Indians? Okay, now the traditional belief, especially with the Indians, is that we are all Aryans, especially the North Indians are all Aryans. That means the Aryans, they have the people originated in India, and they are expert in the horse riding, and then they later from India they migrated to Asia and Europe. This hypothesis is called out of India hypothesis. Many people in India believe that this is the history, okay, including the linguists. And then they connected with the development of Indo-European languages, including Sanskrit. Okay, they believe that Sanskrit originated in India, and then it actually when the people migrated to Asia and remaining part of Asia and to Europe, it spreads to that area. Okay, then Aryans, they conquered Europe. This is actually then Harappan civilization in India is also something connected with the Vedic period. This was actually the conventional belief in India, but the DNA study totally discard all these hypotheses and tells us different stories. And these DNA studies tells us different stories, and the stories reveals that the Indians now, they came through different three kind of migration happened to India. I told you about the ancient people who migrated from Africa and settled in different parts of the India. For the time being, we can consider them as ancestral North Indians and ancestral South Indians. Earlier, it can be connected with Aryans and Dravidians, but the recent study says that the South Asian hunter-gatherers, that they are called the ancient South Indians. They are the oldest people in the subcontinent, and they are some way or other, some part of the population is related with the Andaman Nicobar people or islanders. Okay. And the second group of the Indians actually are the mix with the Iranian agriculturalists. And that means this is connected with the Bactria Margiana archaeological complex, from where the fossils were excavated and compared. And then the second group of Indians actually come from the Iran. They were actually agriculturalists, and they came to the Indian continent, and then mixed up with the already available Indian populations there, and they actually facilitated the development of agricultural practices in India. And third group is very, very important. They come from the pastures, the grasslands in the called steppe. And the steppe people actually come from the Central Asian grasslands, and that is actually from north of Afghanistan, and that part is now currently Kazakhstan, and who were actually earlier known as the Aryans. They came and settled in India. And the people who are now currently called the ancestral North Indians basically are the people who come from the Central Asia or the Kazakhstan. And the mixing of the Iranian agriculturalists and the Asian hunter-gatherers created the Indus Valley population. Okay, so this is the current belief based on the DNA studies. I'll come to that later. Okay. And this Iranian people actually, they mixed with the Indus Valley people, and then they migrated towards south. Okay, and then they became the current the South Indian population. And the current North Indian population, more white-skinned people basically are the people who mixed with the people came from the steppe pastoralists, who are actually better horse riders, and they were better agricultural practices. They have all the cultural practices which is now followed by the North Indians, and they have the North Indian groups. The people who are now called ancestral North Indians basically are the people with a lot of gene mixing with the people come from the steppe or the Kazakhstan. And then you can see that is the reason why we have a lot of mixed population in India. Okay. And when these people came to India, they mixed up with the culture, and then the steppe population, especially the grassland invaders, they have a priestly caste and culture. And then the Sanskrit actually was their language, the Eurasian language, and it also came to India through these people, and that is how that is also explained by the linguists here. Okay, and then what is actually the proof? And when the sequences are made out of the 140 Indian groups, and many of the North Indian Brahmins, they carry the genetic similarity with the steppe population, and which clearly shows that what we call the North Indians, majority of the upper class North Indians, basically are the peoples who came from the Kazakhstan and the steppe people. And then, naturally they mixed up with the lot of people here, and even the people who actually with the steppe the ancestry, and then they suggest that there is a mixing of the population of the Eurasia with that. But in 4,000-year-old DNA molecule, the fossil was actually excavated recently from the Kigari in Haryana. But strangely, that has more connectivity with the genetic makeup of the South Indians, which clearly shows that the people in North and South, 100,000 years back, they freely migrated and then they crossbred, and that is why they have a different kind of genetic machinery available. And this study of David Rig is very, very important, and this shows that there is Western European foragers or the agricultural people there, Eastern European foragers are there, and they finally migrated. And they migrated and mixed with the people in India, and then that's the reason why at present the so-called Indians we see a lot of migrations. So you can see that there is a migration happening from the Kazakhstan region to India, and there is actually an Iranian population migrating to India. So we have two kinds of population in India: the ancestral North Indians and ancestral South Indians. Ancestral South Indians have more and more connectivity with the African lineage, whereas this ancestral North Indians now has more connectivity with the two group of people, particularly the one group which migrated from Kazakhstan. And then these people from the Iran, they also migrated and mixed with the North Indian population. And this North Indian population and South Indian population also mixed thoroughly. And that actually gave a kind of mixing in this kind of Indian population. So in India, based on the DNA studies, there are two kinds of population: ancestral North Indians. We may partly call them Aryans. And then the people in South India, they inherited more genes from the African lineage, and as a result, even in the morphology, they are different. Okay, this is how the stories of DNA based on the haplotypes, mitochondrial DNA, clearly explains to you. Okay, so this is how the mitochondrial haplotype lineages are drawn in different parts of the world. Details, there are large number of studies available, and you can have a look at it. Okay. And I also request all of you to read this wonderful book written by Tony Joseph, and this is called Early Indians, and which clearly, and it is translated into different languages, including Hindi and Malayalam, and these translations are available, which is written in a relatively simple language, not a complex language, and it clearly shows that everyone in the mainland of India today is a mix of different populations, and and this related with the West Eurasians. And the ancestry is more closely related with the East Asian and the South Asian population. That means no group in India can claim genetic purity. We are actually a mixture of different populations in different parts of the world. And that means if at all we want to call India as, the whole philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, world one family, originated from India. And then we are the ones actually can explicitly say this kind of a philosophy: the world is one family, because we inherited the genes from different kind of ancestors or the human populations in different parts of the world. Then the question comes: why the population is more homogeneous in the recent past? That means in the last 5,000 years, or rather in the last 2,000 years, the Indian population is completely divided based on caste and creed, and this is our own creation. And this kind of a caste system in India, prevailing in India in the last 2,000 years, particularly made our populations genetically isolated, because we actually divided ourselves as Hindus, Muslims, and Christians. That's a different matter. But within the population, we have created different castes, and intercaste marriage was not at all prevalent, especially in the last several hundred years. And as a result, each of the caste, they have their own genetic identity. There was lesser amount of genetic mixing, and as a result, there is more and more homogeneous, the gene pools available now in India. rather than in China, because China, the population, even though it's a larger country, a lot of mixing happens as revealed by the DNA, and as a result there is lesser amount of homogeneity in the population. But as far as Indians are concerned, in the last 2000 years, since we created a caste system, and the gene pool is limited within the caste system, and we have our own homogeneity in the populations. And then the whole, interestingly, the whole the caste system, the division of the caste in India, which happened only in the last 3000 years, is based on a fundamental document called Manusmriti, which is basically a Hindu law, which is probably originated 1,000 years back before Christ, and it justifies, the caste system based on the skin color and also division of labor. We divided the people into Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, and then the outlier was also created in the recent past in the Indian history as Dalit or outcasts. Okay, the people who were considered as street sweepers or latrine cleaners, etc. And unfortunately, this kind of a system is actually strengthened by the Mughal emperors, and then the British rulers, and they again facilitated. And even though this kind of a caste system was there in India almost 3000 years back, but it was rather flexible. But we made it very strong in the last 1000 years. Our rulers, starting from the Gupta dynasty, we clearly demarcated the caste system, and we thought, started thinking about the religion, caste, etc. Okay, that is a very wonderful story about the Indian system. And that means if you look at the whole history of human beings, how the human beings in the 200,000 years of our history, we are all remain connected through only DNA molecule, and how in the last 2000 years we created religion, we created caste, and particularly in India we created this kind of a caste system, which is no more there in many parts of the world. And then we created different kind of divisions in the society. That's a different story. And there are interesting sub stories you can create about that. I'm not explaining that because of the lack of time. And the discovery of the tool system itself actually triggered our development, because when we started eating the meat, and then it became very, very common, and that also drove the human evolution. And because I told you already, the meat, how it contributed the protein molecules, which enabled our development. And the Neanderthals diet consists of 80% meat. That means we were primarily, the meat-eating people in the past, and then only we became vegetarians in the later part of the our history. And the modern genetics stories explain many other things. For example, you look at the hair patterns and the influence of hair traits. If you have the eyebrows closed, and there is actually a connectivity, and if you have a gray scare, the hair developing early in your life, and all are connected. Now the human the molecular modern the molecular studies identify 18 genes that appear to influence the hair traits, including the first ever the gene associated with graying. Some people they gray their hair much early. Now the genetic stories tells that there is a gene specifically responsible for that, genetically inherited, and that is the reason. So now for every human character, there is actually a genetic backup also. And then the people in Eurasia, Europe and Asia, they inherited a lot of few genes from the Neanderthals, and that is the reason why the population in this part of the planet are more susceptible to diseases, because we got some genes along with the Neanderthal genes also, and which made the population susceptible. And if you look at the the way in which we inherit the immunity, the people in the Homo sapiens, you can see there is genetically pure, because there is no mixing of Neanderthal genes. But the people in many parts of the Europe and Asia, they have more genes inherited from the Neanderthals, and that is the reason why the population here are susceptible to diseases. They are less immune to certain diseases. That is also a very interesting study revealed by the mitochondrial DNA analysis and haplotype analysis. And you can see the people in America, they also have not the pure the Africans. They have the Eurasians migrating back to the American continents, and they are also susceptible to diseases. You can correlate with the recent disease outbreaks also. So far I explained what is actually the connectivity between the genes and the human origin and migration. It tells you a very simple story that human beings are all have a single origin. Okay, and we have a lot of connectivity with the people in Africa, and then we created our own ways of religion and all. If at all there is something to connect the human beings in the planet, it is only the DNA molecule. Okay. And now, what would be the future of human beings? And there are a lot of interesting books available. And this is a recent book, one of my favorites, Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which tells you three kinds of evolution after in the recent past. Okay, after the human origin and its migration to different parts. And first thing he considered, the Harari considered, is the cognitive evolution. Some kind of the revolution happened in our intelligence, and which enabled us to read, write, and think. Okay. And second is the agricultural revolution, which finally settled the human population in different parts of the world, especially along the river basins. It happened 10,000 years back. And the scientific revolution happened only 500 years ago, where we use scientific tools to advance ourselves. So if you look at the recent parts of the human history, you will see these kind of revolutions. And I'm going specifically, about the human behavior in the recent past. You will see that what I actually connect the human population now is only ideas. No, I speak something, I develop an idea, I develop a hypothesis, I talk this to different parts of the world, and then we all inherit it. We all imbibe that, and then we develop a different kind of stories. So this is the connectivity of ideas that actually made us a single population in the globe now. And even if we spread myths, that is also taken care of. And that is the reason why we think we created Christianity. That is how we created Islam. That is how we created Hinduism. Okay, because these are all ideas developed by certain people, and there will be a lot of followers. And that is how the whole history of human civilization tells us. And human beings essentially are different from other part of the other animals in different parts of the world. For example, you look at the other animals which form societies. Look at ants. Yesterday there was a talk. And look at the honeybee colonies. There is actually a caste system where the division of labor is there. But the only thing, and there is also chimpanzee, there is a well-defined social order in the society. But what makes human beings different from others is that we tell myths and stories. We tell about capitalism, okay, we tell about communism, fine. Then there will be a lot of followers. And then this is how the human beings, we communicate. Okay, and we are extremely flexible. We tell the science is highly dynamic. As you say, this is truth today, I am telling you. This is actually the truth as revealed by the human DNA molecule. This is the truth which I tell you today, or the scientists tell you today. And then you believe that this is science. But when a new discovery comes, we actually redefine truth. And this is something which make human beings different. We communicate the ideas, and that is how we remain connected to each other. Okay. And that is another revolution which happened in the world, unfortunately, is a religious revolution. We created religions based on different faiths, and because nobody said that they have seen the God. They only said that I am actually the representative of the gods. We have no gods, but we ultimately said that we are the representative of gods, and we created. And we propagated the story because we were good in telling stories. Okay, and then we created this kind of a physical reality, and and then imagined reality. We have physical reality because we are existing today, but there is an imagined reality that we imagine that there is something called religion, and then we propagated the idea, and then we started believing in different kind of the religions ultimately. Okay, and the current humans have little knowledge in our own history. Unfortunately, that's a problem. When you think about when we think about the religion, when you think about caste, we never think about the past. Unfortunately, that's happening with the people who study science as well. Okay, when we think about religion, when we think about caste and the creed, and we never think about the science behind that. But I am not saying that you should all become atheists. No. Okay, you should not believe in God. I never said that. But the problem is that when you think like that, you also should apply the common sense to think about the history, how we came, how we originated, and what is actually the nonsense we are speaking about religion and caste, creed, etc. Okay, that is the reason why the study of biology is more interesting, because this connects all of us together. And there are very interesting studies. This is a study which appeared in Science, one of the topmost journals in science now, which tells you how the societies, started worshipping fire, worshipping the trees, and then they, from that kind of a belief of worshipping natural forces, when the population became more and more, we started telling the stories about something else which controlled the human population. Then came the leaders actually who preach. In order to control the mobs and the society, they started preaching about the big gods which will bring betterment to the human society, and people started believing in that. And this paper you have to actually read the paper in the Science, which appeared in 2005, how the societies got bigger. And when the societies got bigger, when we have the leaders who tell that there is something else called God, which actually is actually controlling all of us. Okay. And when the complex societies proceed, then we started moralizing gods, and the societies became complex when the population increased. And then when we started migrating and settling in different parts of the world, we got a lot of free time to think. This was not the earlier case. When we were hunter gatherers, we were afraid of the animals surrounding us. And when we settled and done agriculture, the food was there, ensured. And then we got a lot of free time. And of course that also initiated cultural revolution. Anyway, then we started moralizing God. And there is an interesting paper by Whitehouse et al. In 2019, which appeared in the journal Nature, which tells you very interesting stories how the complex societies proceed moralizing God throughout the world history. And then how this became established facts when the societies evolved. Okay. And so the science and society actually, the religion can actually coexist. And this is an interesting statement by John Paul II, which clearly says that science can purify religion from error. That means you can believe in a religion, no issue. You can believe in a religion, no issue. You can go to the church or temple, no issue, or mosque, no issue. But don't believe in superstition, because the importance of studying science is that it should actually purify the religion. If it is a mistake, actually you should be bold enough to say it's a mistake. If you it is not actually an opportunity to spread the superstitions about many things in the world. Okay. So that also happened with regard to India. And Homo sapiens are very special. Unlike other animals, we actually do business. Okay. We also created money. Okay. And we also created agricultural revolution. And from multiculturalism, where a lot of civilizations were there, we are actually trying now to create monoculturalism. That means we are Hindus, we are Christians, we are Muslims. We actually propagated the stories like that. That means we are coming to an unipolar. We are trying to be in a unipolar world, which never happened in the past. Okay. And we are actually speaking about the multiculturalism. Multiculturalism essentially is actually the philosophy of India as well. Okay. So that means we are not a pure culture, as revealed by the genes. Okay. As told by you look at Indian food, we see that biryani is our the culture. We got this kind of a food culture from different cultures. We mix up with the different cultures, and that actually given something called the Indian food. The Indian food which we talk about today was nothing Indian now, because it's actually a mix of different kind of combinations we tried, and then we inherited in the last 2000 years. Okay. And that means no culture can live, as Mahatma Gandhi said, in its exclusiveness. It's not, you cannot be exclusive. You have to think about multiple things. The way in which we think, when we think about human beings, we are all fools in some way or other, because we believe that we will become immortal by making statues. None of the society have become immortal by making statues, by spending a lot of money in making structures like this. No. It never happened with other animals in this planet. We believe that we will become immortal by the larger civil constructions like this, and this is hollow. And also we believe that the greatest challenges are solved by the religion. No, you look at the largest the incidences happened in human history. Look at famine. Look at the plague. and look at the wars. All are human creations. Okay, and the famine. You look at the famine, the Bengal famine, for example. The Bengal famine was actually, the recent studies clearly says that Bengal famine was a creation of the political system in India. When the Britishers decided that they have to conserve more and more cereals, and they have exported it back to England in anticipation of a war, it created the famine in India. It's actually a political decision, not because of climate change, not because India failed to produce more grains. Now we know that. Okay, and plague. And during the time of we are now living in the world of COVID, and then even in the time of COVID, we believe that the religions and the gods created by us will come as a savior. No, only science came as a savior. And war, all the wars are created by human beings just to sell our arms, or just to satisfy our ego. That is happening across the world, and all these things are human creations. And but the solutions actually came from science only. So when we go ahead, when we plan ahead, what is the solution? The solution is very simple: believe in science, but at the same time you can be proud of your culture. You can believe in your God, no issue, but apply a common sense when you think about the human beings. And there is actually, we are all have the same kind of ancestors. We are all remain connected. But what is the future? The future is not technology. That is what the scientist also tells you. And we have seen in the world of the COVID, the post-COVID era, we have seen that a single virus particle can actually stop the world from moving. And then came the vaccine, which we believe that it will save the humanity from all kind of destructions. But the neoliberal policies which we follow, we ultimately, many of the political systems across the world ultimately believe that this kind of an open policy, the neoliberal policy, will ultimately help us. Trade is the secret of success. That's a new belief. But the post-COVID era, we have to think that this is not the success. The human beings, if we wanted to succeed as a civilization, what is essentially to be done is to believe in ourselves, believe in the human potential, believe in our connectivity, believe in our relationship, believe in our potential to exceed as a single unit. We have to actually, we have seen in the post-COVID era that what has helped the mankind to recover from this shock is our mutual dependence, our collaboration. And that means we have to be more and more compassionate in future, in the post-COVID era, when we also have to think about what gives the human beings more happiness, the way in which we can live sustainable life, living without harming the nature, because we have seen that the corona itself, or the COVID itself, the virus itself, is actually something our own creation. Because we have destroyed the forest systems, the virus got a chance to mix up with the human population and spread early. Because we are connected to each other, the virus which originated in China got spread to different parts of the world, because we are actually traveling across the world like anything. It's a global village. So in order to think about the future, one, we need to understand that the human species are something very unique. We have the responsibility to save the planet. We need to think about the future. The only way in which the human beings live as a common civilization is to help each other, make sympathy with each other, help each other, and then understand that what is the the wrong things which we have done in terms of politics, in terms of the neoliberal policies. What is done to be done for the future of the mankind is to understand that we can save the planet, we can save ourselves from the recent the upcoming extinction, only through collaboration, cooperation, and the mutual trust. Thank you so much.